everyone, and welcome to the Two Guys podcast. I am Brad Waid. It's nice to be with you today, but it's really nice to have my host, Steve Acho. Steve, how are you doing, my friend?
Great, Brad.
It's so good seeing you. And it's nice to get back together. And today we're doing AI. We're going to do an introduction to artificial intelligence. People who have been following us for quite a while now know, Steve, this is something you and I like. Even when we're just hanging out, we talk AI all the time. So it's a topic that we love and we can really get into. And there are some deeper areas that we have explored and we'll explore more. But today, for those people, today we're just going to do a light introduction, right, Steve?
Sounds great. Yeah, this is something we could geek out on for hours.
Yes. So, all right. So what we're going to do is now coming to you for the first time, we have video. So if you're listening to us on podcast, you can also go over to our websites, bradwade.com and Steve Acho, and you can also find it on video. And if you're watching on video, go over to Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, and you can listen to us on that drive to work. So today we're going to be discussing AI or artificial intelligence. So Steve, let's start here. Let's take turns. How do you see artificial intelligence? What is it? How would you define it? What does it mean to you?
Sure. Well, AI isn't very new. I think just the advances are new. And I think, I don't know who to attribute this quote to, but somebody said that once something becomes normal, we stop calling it AI. We stop calling it artificial intelligence. So it's essentially, the ability for a non-human to do something intelligent, as the name suggests, that is normally reserved for human level intelligence. And, we already have, your thermostat is a version of an AI, right? Because if you want your house set at 70 degrees, it's got a sensor and it notices, which is, doing some kind of calculation and artificial thought. And then it makes a decision and does something. And that's not a very advanced AI. So we're used to it. So we don't think of it that way. But there are so many, I'm sure you could name off a million, but what are the simple things that we're used to that already are artificially intelligent?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's wonderful about this, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what AI is, why it's important, first uses. So that's what Steve's talking about. We're going to talk about kind of like where it is in our lives right now. We're going to tell you what the market size is. And then right at the end, we're going to dive into kind of what's coming up next. So I'll read you the definition I always use. And if people have seen my work or seen me speak, I speak on artificial intelligence a lot. I do a lot of keynotes around emerging technology. I have a slide and you'll see it if you're watching this on the video version. I have a slide and I describe it as this: an intelligent agent that perceives its environment and makes decisions to maximize chances of achieving its goals. Now that's kind of a big definition, because to your point, AI is, has a very big sliding scale. When people hear AI, they think Terminator or they think something out of Star Wars, one of the droids or something like that.
Yeah, but I think that just to stop you on that point right there, that Hollywood has really conditioned us to think of artificial intelligence as, for lack of a better word, a robot. And it certainly could be a future use of AI, an artificially intelligent, thing that it looks like a human that's walking around and making decisions. But I think it's important to just distinguish that a robot, as an example, is just a container for AI. AI is the intelligence, right? So it doesn't have to be a physical thing that walks around or anything, right? It's just the intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, our phone is a container for AI right now.
Sure.
And anything that we say, hey Siri or hey Alexa, my phone's going off, is an AI container
doing its job.
Doing its job. So some of the things that let's look at a few of the things that are here now, because when I talk about AI or I talk about any emerging technologies, what I do with people is I bring them, I say, all right, here's where it is now. Here's how it's affecting your lives today. And you don't even realize it. And that's what I'd like to share. One of the things is predictive maps. Have you, Steve, we've talked about this. When you get in your car and all of a sudden your phone lights up and it says you're 9 minutes away from, this location or work or whatever. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And what that is, the phone has access to our calendar, our clock, our GPS and stuff. And what it
Wait,
does
is
is
that
start
my phone telling me I'm fat or?
exactly what it's
Okay.
doing is, it's predicting behaviors. It's watching and it's looking at patterns, recognizing patterns, and then predicting, where you may be headed or going. That's a very simple AI use case that's actually happening today to pretty much anybody with a smartphone. And they to your point, because it's not too far fetched, they don't realize that's an AI.
Same, I think, with, some of the things that many tens of millions of us are familiar with, like Amazon and buying products, and even like Spotify or wherever you get your music from. For the most part, there are engines, not people. There are artificially intelligent algorithms that are doing things like, you might like this, right? I mean, this is old. This is not new. Everybody is familiar with going on Amazon and having them recommend products. And most people are pretty surprised that it's like, oh, this actually is something I would like, right? And it's a little scary and interesting at the same time. But, the same thing goes for, Netflix has a huge
Yep.
engine, and Spotify, wherever you get your entertainment, for the most part, because there are tens of millions of people using it and all this data, there's an artificially intelligent system that's doing its best to maximize the outcome that it wants, which is for you to use the system more, which is, right. That's the last half of your awesome definition of AI.
Well, thanks. Yes. And, just anything that, where you consume content, like you said, Spotify, YouTube, Netflix, or whatever. If people may not have realized this, when you go onto it, it starts predicting things. It starts watching your watch patterns and everything like that. Social media is very similar as well. So all these are things that are happening today with AI. And one more that I think is very fascinating, because so often when I tell this to people, people are shocked, and it's so funny because, okay, so chat bots, when you go on a website and, it says, do you want to talk to an agent? That's really, it's not a human, everybody. Sorry to spoiler alert. It's not a human. And you can actually have some fun with chat bots. What there are, they recognize language, and they're there to help you with basic questions. Have you ever had any interactions with chat bots?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And I think it's one of those things that I can see evolving right in front of me. Siri in the early days was laughable. I mean, there's still websites dedicated to like Siri misunderstanding and stuff like that, but you can see how much better it's getting. And I view chatbots as the same thing. In the beginning, it was laughable. It was like, like, you're going to fool me into thinking I'm talking to a human. I don't think so. This is ridiculous. And it's coming closer to passing the Turing test. It's not there.
Yes, it's not there,
Right.
but it's getting closer. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's, by the way, that's, do you want to describe that, or the Turing test, since we brought it up?
So the Turing test is when an AI when a person who is doing the test cannot tell if it is talking to a human or an artificial intelligence being. And we could go down some rabbit holes about that. Yeah. That's another episode. Check
just
them
a
out.
Definition for now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's just a definition for now.
And Brad, I want to, just while we're on the what it is section of this, I just want to break down within artificial intelligence, because, you and I are giving examples of AI in our lives right now and things that have been around. And it's everything from, like you said, your whole phone, your calculator, Spotify, every app on there. It goes a little further. Even like your car has artificially intelligent systems, right? Like anti-lock brakes.
Yep.
But AI is really broken down into three categories, right? There's artificial narrow intelligence, ANI. There's artificial general intelligence, AGI, and artificial super intelligence, ASI, which is basically the aliens taking over. But everything that we've said so far has been narrow artificial intelligence. And that includes the things that many of you may have heard of, like right at this moment, the best checkers and chess player in the world is a computer, and always will be. It's well beyond human intelligence, but it's narrow in the same way that your thermostat is narrow, right? Your thermostat can tell when it's below or above 70 degrees and make a decision, right? But it can't unilaterally decide. It can't make lateral predictions or anything like that. It's dumb. It just does that. There was, Brad, I don't know if you know about this. There's a game that's very commonly played that's similar to chess in
Go.
Asia called Go. Yep, Go.
Very familiar. Yes.
And that was, that was thought to be the thing that AI would not be able to do better than a human, because even though it's somewhat of a closed loop system like chess, there's only so many moves, even if there's hundreds of millions. It was thought that there was just too much human strategy and all that. And lo and behold, it beat, the best chess grandmaster multiple times. And so all of those things that we're talking about are narrow artificial intelligence. And I don't think that there are yet examples of artificial general intelligence. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and it's getting better. But when we say narrow, it's narrow because it can't think laterally. Like it can tell, it can beat you at chess, but it can't yet tell the difference between a cat and a dog, right? And so sometimes there's another quote that says that AI has succeeded in every field that requires thinking, but it's failed so far till we get it better. And every field that humans and animals can basically do without thinking, right? We know the difference between a cat and a dog. It could be an animated thing. It could be a thing moving. That's extremely complex for a computer to be able to figure out. And that would be an example of problem solving or thinking abstractly in a way that a human can do. And am I wrong about that? Or are there examples of AGI?
Well, it depends really how you personally define AGI. We can look at IBM's Watson. Watson. One of the things Watson can do is kind of debate in real time. We can debate if that's a narrow or a general. Really.
Debate Watson.
Yeah, exactly. Watson has gotten really good at doing live debates with a moderator. What it's doing, it's using its processing power to go scour articles and information. And then in addition to that information, it's putting together, language.
I see.
Persuasive.
It's creating in a way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that
may be a good example. And I don't know if this is either. I remember the old Atari games when we were growing up.
Yes. Yes. I know where you're going with this one.
Yeah. I don't know the details of it. I just kind of heard the high level, but apparently given the task of playing the game and, winning the game, the way that I read the story was that they didn't really have to tell the AI how to play Pong or Space Invaders
Correct.
Or Pac-Man. They were just like, here's the goal, you get to the goal. Yes. To me, that's an example of something that requires some form of abstract thinking.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They did not. It used to be, our definition just a few years ago was give them the rules and they will learn.
Got it.
Now we've kind of evolved even more to your point. We gave them a goal. We gave them the Atari 2600 and said, here are, a bank of 40 games. Here is your goal. And
learn them.
They failed miserably for a long, but they failed over in seconds, and then turned it around and learned, Steve, you bring up a really good point. Just in lots of conversation we have had over the years, one things you point out, and I think this is a great way, and I use it to explain people this point, and thank you. The best human player only has a certain amount of years to become the best human player. Mm-hmm. Their learning curve is not infinite. You know what I mean? They've got this window. Whereas an AI supercomputer, to the fact that it learned to Go and beat the grand master in Go, that supercomputer can do so many reps. A human, because let's just say it takes 30 minutes to play a game. How many, even if they're doing it 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, whatever, we have a maximum
amount of time.
Maximum. Thank you. Holy cow. A maximum amount of, times we can do this. Whereas a supercomputer they can do the game in seconds, milliseconds, whatever it is.
And their processing time is something like, maybe better than this, but 1 million times faster than a human. That's already superhuman.
Right.
We're pretty quick.
Right. And again, it's pretty narrow. We're not asking it to go. If we asked it to go climb a tree or whatever, obviously because of its, constraints, could never be able to do that. So anyway, so there's, and I'm glad you brought up, we've already been talking some of the examples. I'm glad you brought up that there's a lot of AI in our cars, the driver assistance, the assistive braking, the adaptive cruise control, which I love, best feature on my car. I love the adaptive cruise control, all of those different things inside your your car, the chatbots, voice commands, all that. So we've given people what I would challenge people watching this, if AI is fairly new to you, I would challenge you to try to spot AI being used in a day. Where is AI being used around you? Because when I do a keynote, I do 5 technologies that are changing our lives right now. And out of those 5, it's interesting because AI to most people seems like, oh, that's the most far-fetched. But when we go into the numbers and the data, I show them, I say AI is impacting everyone here more than any of the other 4 technologies, and you don't even realize it. And we just basically go into what you and I just talked about. Now,
Do you
before
have
we
any stats on the market? The
Yes,
market
yes.
for AI?
So that's great. Glad you asked. So the market size AI. So if we look at market size for AI in 2020, AI was a $51 billion market, which sounds like a lot. That it is. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, 50. But by 2028, so we're just talking, it's 2022. So that's just 6 years from now. It's going to be 640 billion. That's a 10x. That's already a 10x, a 12x. It's really closer to a 13. And that's that might even be conservative. I'm not sure, but the market size is huge.
And this is everything, right? From that we've talked about, from manufacturing to retail to entertainment, healthcare, of course, right?
Yeah. And to that point, I know we share a lot of stuff on AI. AI is in virtually every industry. It's big in healthcare right now, as you mentioned, because there's a lot of money in research in AI in healthcare. Anything with data, if you're familiar with Industry 4.0, big data, we've talked about it, is a big thing. So mining data, AI does a lot of that.
We could probably do an episode just on AI in healthcare, for example.
Oh, absolutely.
Give, kind of clinical and higher level examples of how it's improving the world.
I would love that, because there's so many good things that it does. And, we have, if you want to know and go down the rabbit hole of AI, go look. We have 2 other episodes. Should we be afraid of AI, where we really go into it. But let's slate some time for healthcare. AI in healthcare. I think that would be wonderful. Steve, before we start to wrap up and look at future uses, to you, why is AI important? A lot of people, are on the fence. What are some of the things that you believe why AI is important for us to be looking at and utilize?
I think it's extremely important because the second word. I think intelligence is all we have. It's what separates us from every other species. It's what's allowed humanity to progress and thrive, and will allow us in the future. I think that it's probably not going to be a human. It's going to be a closer to human level AI that's going to give us answers. It's going to solve world hunger and cure cancer, and also not just give us better quantity, but quality of life. Because again, like, intelligence is just the most important thing. I don't think anyone is against more intelligence, right? And so when you have something that could be smarter and is already 1,000,000 times faster, there was an analogy that I heard where just the difference between a computer right now and a human level, just information processing speed, nothing else, here's the analogy. It's like you and I are having a conversation, and you ask me a question, and I don't go research or do anything on the internet. But if I had the processing speed of a computer, I would have 12 months to sit here and think about what my answer would be. If the process, and that's just process, that's just my current normal level of intelligence that I'm at right now, which isn't that great. But how much greater would it be if I had 12 months to sit here and think of a response, right? That's just processing speed. And then if you add intelligence to that and then compound that intelligence, it's mind blowing. I can't even think of the math, right? So that's my answer.
Well, I love it. And I like the way you gave that analogy. So often we talk about how many times faster. You kind of gave us the opposite from our lens, how much time we would have. That was really brilliant. Now, let's take a look as we start to wrap up. Let's start to take a look and think about, for our viewers, what are some of the future applications that we are starting to explore with AI and what we can see in the future. Do you have any off the top of your head that, where you could see it going, or you've seen little, glances into where it might be headed?
I think, this is an obvious one and not yet ubiquitous, um, but autonomous vehicles are coming, and I think they're not ubiquitous. They're not on the road yet, but I've got a lot of quotes today, but one that comes to mind that I've heard before is the future is already here. It's just not mass distributed. And
Mhm.
it's like you and I have probably driven by cars around where we live or where we've traveled that don't have a driver and haven't noticed. At some point, that will be the norm. I mean, at some point, it wasn't even normal to have a car. Like the first car,
Right,
everybody was
right.
like, "Wow, what is that horse with wheels?" Right? And so
Yep.
it's going to change. But I think that is potentially the next big thing that we're going to see, and it's going to be more common.
Yeah, absolutely. That I will piggyback on that with you as well. Autonomous vehicles is, it's a big market. With the electric vehicle market, autonomous vehicle market, those can go hand in hand. Us, doing this show from the Motor City, we're calling in from Detroit. So we see a lot of this going around. There are a lot of startups with autonomous vehicles in our area. One of them is May Mobility, out of Ann Arbor. They already have some, they have vehicles. I've been doing some work with them, which is
That's a Google
fantastic.
company, right?
No, May Mobility. I don't think, unless they've, I
Or
guess
are
I'd
you
have to.
saying Waymo?
No, May. Waymo is May
Okay,
Mobility,
got it.
MAY. Yeah,
Oh,
May
I see.
Mobility.
Okay.
Yeah, Waymo too. I've worked with them too.
Yeah.
Those are ironically you say that, those are the two that I've been in
And
contact
they're in
with.
Ann Arbor as well. I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was so. They actually. So I was out in Grand Rapids a couple weeks ago for a conference, and I know that's where they have their fleet doing a
Oh,
lot of test
cool.
driving. And so it was so funny. I was crossing
Yeah.
the street and I saw one of their vehicles, and I literally turned around and clapped for them. I don't know. I was just like, I was giving them, well,
It's
the
funny to
car.
think of test rides or test drives in an autonomous vehicle because it's actually a test passenger. You're not
Yes,
driving anything.
yes, it's fascinating, and we could go down that as well. The next thing, like, so that's coming up that people can see. But one of the things, like, if anybody's a Marvel fan out there, Captain Marvel, if you look at the movie, the funny thing is Kree, the whole civilization is based on the supreme intellect and AI
Huh.
that works with the civilization. So it's very interesting. I know that's extremely extreme, but just it's
Yeah.
fun to kind of look at the far reaches of it and let your brain kind of go into it. But the reality is there's a lot of AI right now all around us. I think your example of autonomous vehicles is a great one that we're going to start seeing real soon. And as you travel or walking around, if don't be surprised if you see one and they'll have placards on there telling that there's not a driver. It's pretty cool. Usually
Hmm.
you can tell because they have a lot of more sensors.
Uh,
They have a lot more
they're
sensors.
visible. They're on the outside.
Oh yeah, most of them are on
Yeah.
the outside. They got the LiDAR and everything, and you can see a lot of the equipment on top of the vehicle. And they usually have a placard on the back for sure. And it's so funny. I've taken pictures of them, when I was in San Francisco out here and stuff like that.
Great.
And it's just, I think it's great. My
It's going to
kids.
be weird because I've been telling, the last however many years that we all have smartphones in our hands, I've been telling kids like we need to change the thing we tell little kids, which is look both ways before you cross the street. Like that's not enough anymore. This is serious. I always say we need to change that to make eye contact with the driver, right? Because just because you see the vehicle doesn't mean that the driver's paying attention to you. I don't know what to tell them after that.
Well, and so here's some funny thing too, is electric vehicles are also now so quiet that they're actually talking about having to create some noise so pedestrians know they're coming.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that, but it makes sense.
Well, think about that. Well, I
Wow.
was I was in Amsterdam and I came up from the train station, and they have an electric trolley system. I friend of mine like I mean, I didn't even know it stopped. It was waiting for me. I mean, I didn't
Get
even
out of the
hear it. A
way.
friend of mine's like, all right. I mean, they don't go very fast there. They're pretty
How
quick.
fast do you need to get hit by a car? Like,
I mean, it was a lot bigger than me, so
yeah.
it would have ruined my day probably.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah. So, I always appreciate jumping on, having a great conversation with you, Steve. Why don't
Yeah,
we
thanks, Brad.
close this chapter on AI today? Because I know we have a lot more fun things to go. Any last words you would like to share with people out here watching? How can they get a hold of you? Are you on social media? How can they download your music? They probably don't even know you're a famous musician. I mean, I say because millions of downloads, but anyways, that's me talking. How can they get a hold of you, Steve?
Yeah, well, luckily my name is easy, Steve Acho, ACHO, and I'm the only one in the world, so which means I can't commit any crimes. But yeah, but if you just Google me, you'll see everything, and steveacho.com
Awesome. Well,
takes you
so good.
everywhere,
Absolutely.
just like bradwade.com.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll have the information on the video here. And I just have to shout out to my kids. Thank you for the Cloud9 jersey. For those of you League of Legends or gamers out there, you know what this is. So I am sporting my Cloud9 jersey today. Wait till next time, see what I'm wearing next. All right, Steve, thank you again so much for being here today. Everybody that's listening on our podcast or watching with us on video, thank you for being here. You make all of this possible. We are so glad you're here. If you have questions about future episodes or suggestions, drop us a line, leave us a comment. Always reach out to us on social media. Thank you again, Steve, for being here. I'm Brad Waid. We're the two guys, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day, everyone.